I hereby call to order this meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. Are there any amendments to the agenda, Mr. Kuzma?
No, ma'am, no amendments.
Thank you. We'll move on to public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. I will start with all those who signed in on the sign-up sheet, and then we'll move on from there. Mr. Robert Ashton. And Mr. Dines, do you have the timer up?
Okay.
All right, sir, you may begin whenever you'd like.
Okay, Madam Chair and board members. First, I want to relay a message from Wayne Bushrod. He said, please relay to the Board of Supervisors my apologies for not being able to attend and my gratefulness for them stepping up and making a move forward in relocating the monument. He has a doctor's appointment at 6:15. Okay, first, I thank you for making the decision you did regarding the Confederate monument. I have a different perspective on the issue after observing the board. I noticed in that one sentence statement the chair made, she directed staff to work with Historyland Memorial Park about relocating the Confederate memorial to determine cost of the relocation and to work with community groups to raise the necessary funds. To me, it appeared that the onus was directly pointing to the NAACP to come up with the funds to have it moved. I recalled how the board disagreed with one of your members regarding road work. He stated it would cost around $120,000 and wanted the board to support it. That statement made me aware of when the board wants to come up with the funding, they can if they want to. You didn't agree with your member, but if you could have seen your expression as to say, why do this at this time, knowing that we have something further to discuss later. Why is it necessary for groups to raise money to remove the monument when the board had come up with a creative way of finding the funds? If the board puts out bids to see how much it would cost to remove the monument, this process can move along quickly and smoothly, and the board itself can show their responsible leadership again. I thank you for the decision you made to have the monument moved. Now, how soon can you get started on the funds to have it removed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Ms. Marcia Stonehill.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Supervisors, Mr. Kusenberry, Mr. Britton. Marcia Stonehill, 17094 Ferry Dock Road. First, thank you. Thank you for hearing your constituents in regards to relocating the Confederate monument. We are very grateful for this leadership decision and for this type of progress in our county. Can you please notify us as to how the public will be kept informed of the progress of this move? Second, in continuation of moving forward with the RBHC strategy for the revitalization of the Ralph Bunche High School, RBHC remains motivated and on standby. It is our understanding that once the county administrator has completed a review, we will be contacted by the county administrator with questions. Of course, we welcome all questions, concerns, or clarification of the work we have been doing, and we welcome this from anyone. We look forward to getting proper documents in place so we can proceed with the capital campaign. Please answer, not for me, but for the public. When an organization is soliciting for millions of dollars for a county-owned building, Is a letter of intent the appropriate document to demonstrate credibility when approaching a foundation or philanthropist for such large sums of money? Would you give large amounts of money to an organization with only a letter of intent? Or would you say, come back when you have your option agreement? In regards to the National Park Service grant, Madam Chair, during your work on that grant, you had requested a letter of support from RBAHC, which was provided. We understood you to say that you were also getting letters from government officials and the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association. In a previous board meeting, you mentioned getting support from the government officials. When you submitted the application packet to the National Park Service, did you include the letters provided to you from RBAHC and the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association? Again, RBAHC remains motivated and on standby. We look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Stonehill. I don't have anyone else on the sign-up sheet. Is anyone else present here in the boardroom who wishes to provide comment? Go ahead and come forward, Mr. Shelton.
Don Shelton, Aspen Court. Can you explain I understood that the agreement for supervisors to address to look what it would cost to move it. Was it actually a vote to move the monument? Did you vote to move the monument behind closed doors? Please explain what that was all about. Thank you.
Anyone else here in the boardroom for public comment? Mr. Dines, do we have anyone online for public comment? All right. Members of the board, do we have any written correspondence?
Yes, ma'am. I had from several weeks ago from Miss Brenda Hinson. I've already forwarded it to staff and asked them to add it to the record. She just asked that her email be included in the record. It had to do with the Civil War Memorial. So I've sent it on, and it should be part of the minutes from here.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, I'll now close public comment and move on to reports of members of the board. Mr. Granger?
Yes, ma'am. Just like to say thank you to everyone who came out. Mr. Ashton, thank you for sharing Mr. Bushrod's information as well. So I appreciate that. I'll speak to the road you brought up, the $120,000 road. That was myself. So to explain the situation, a developer had put together a site plan for a home development, and part of it had to deal with putting the road into the VDOT system. It's been 15 years, and he has still not been true to his word on accomplishing that action. And so there's a letter of credit. There's litigation going on, so I'm not going to go into the details of it. The county has decided that this is a long time. We would take on the risk, and then we would take it to the developer and the bank who has a letter of credit to get the money back. And so it's not really looking at it from the perspective of just finding money. This was supposed to have been done originally by the developer, and the developer's been delinquent. And so this was a way to get that resolved based on the fact that when the people were moving in, that was what the proffer was. So just to try to, and the reason I came forward for the $120,000, I did meet with the citizens. They explicitly asked if I would at least request. I told them at the time, I will ask. Please be aware that it's going to be very unlikely that this will be accepted by my colleagues. And I told them I'm not really even on board with this. We're trying to get this in the VDOT system per the requirement of the site plan that was originally proposed. And so just to provide a little bit more information, that request was just because I was explicitly asked, but I was very candid with them when I spoke with them. I was like, I really can't even get on board with this, but I'll at least share it with my colleagues and because they asked me to, and I was trying to represent them. So I certainly don't mind anyone asking. For if the funds can be made available, I can't always say they will be though. Other than that, everyone else, thank you for coming and providing public comment. Mr. Shelton, the only thing I'll say is votes can't happen in closed session. We don't hold votes in closed session. So no, there's no vote in closed session. Other than that, the only thing I have is that I would like to, I sent an email out to everyone. I have Ms. Sparble of the Library Board of Trustees. She contacted me last couple of weeks, and so she has asked to step down, and I know she's very passionate about the library, and so she has asked that Ms. that I appoint Ms. Elodie Shojunaga to fulfill the rest of her term because she's currently serving as the chair of that board. I spoke with Ms. Shojunaga and she was amenable to still serving. I know it's probably difficult for Ms. Sparkle to step down because she does have a lot of passion, but I thought, okay, this is really important to you, and you think this woman is providing a lot of value, then I'll move forward with that. And Ms. Shojunaga seemed amenable to it well. So I'd like to make a motion to, and Ms. Sparkle also put in her official resignation. But I would like to make a motion to appoint Ms. Elodie Shojunaga to the remainder of the term that had been served by Ms. Sparkle.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
And I apologize. I'm sure I mispronounced her name. And if I did, I apologize. Certainly not intentional, but that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mr. Stonehill.
Just wanted to say thank you for everybody coming out to speak up. This is definitely the time for the public to come and speak to us and tell us what they're thinking or what they're wanting, or so that this is the time. So I do appreciate for everybody coming out, and they can come anytime they want. Saturday, June 5th, I attended a Friends of Rappahannock meeting out at Echo Dale Farm on the Rappahannock. The speakers there for Friends of Rappahannock talked about the mission of the river and how they serve the river and all the communities that are on the Rappahannock River, and how all the communities and all the counties make up part of this river. I did want to thank the Baldwins for hosting the event at their beautiful Riverside house. It was a great event. And the Friends of Rappahannock's litter event, their next litter event is a week from this coming Saturday in Darwin. There's a sign up. They'll be on my, on my social media pages and on the Friends of Rappahannock pages. This week we had an unbelievable rain event, and at my rain gauge I had 9.6 inches in Dowrin, and I did hear that some places had even more than that, and that's tropical storm hurricane type rains. Many folks called and emailed about the flooding situations down in our usual spots in Dowrin, Bayberry, and some of our other usual places along Potomac Drive. Those have all been passed on to VDOT, and they are aware of it. They continue to help ditch and clean out everything they can. They also advise to just please send comments and complaints to them by phone or their website, and they can then follow up on citizens' calls. That's the best way to get them. There was very little that could be done, 9-10 inches of rain in 24 hours. Another thing that, is really helpful, please keep ditches clear in front of your house. I went out and cleared ditches in front of my house as well. We did have some flooding. There was a house down on Potomac that I had seen. They had built a bridge out of logs across the ditch. It doesn't help for draining for water through there. So the best thing to do is just everybody help clean up, and it's a community thing. Try to keep water from backing up into people's yards. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ashton, Ms. Stonehill, and Mr. Shelton, and Mr. Bushrod, with Mr. Ashton delivering his message. Thank you for coming out and talk. I want to talk to everybody I had a couple people call asking about their values for their vehicles and personal property taxes. And some people might not know, due to all the rising inflationary prices, the value of used cars has gone up. So if you have a question, please contact the Commissioner of Revenue, because you might be surprised at how much your car is valued at now as opposed to in the past. I was shocked at what my car was valued at, but that also goes to the personal property tax. So if you have a question or concern, please go over to the Commissioner of Revenue and they'll show you what the valuation of your car is, and it might explain it a little better. This will be my last meeting the other day at the Smoot Library Board of Trustees. I really appreciated the time I was on the board. I'm going to step aside to let a citizen be on the committee and take my place. But I wanted to pass along a couple of things that they're doing at the library. Number one, in August, they're going to have a book sale where it's been very successful, especially last year during COVID. They raised a lot of money, though they are looking for donations. So if you guys are still trying to clean out your houses because of COVID, bring books over there to donate, and they raise money by then putting them all together a couple of days, and they sell them by the bag. So if you have any books to donate, or look out for the book sale in August. And the Friends of the Rappahannock run that. And with that, they're going to help to pay for a couple of metal tables to put outside of the library so people can use the Wi-Fi outside, or students or parents just want to go outside and do an activity. So please help support the Friends of the Library so that they can do those things. With that being said, I have a couple of board appointments. As I just said, I'm stepping down, and I would like to nominate Miss Dixie Washington, who has moved into the Shiloh District, to serve from July 1st. It's a 4-year term.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
I also would like to appoint, we have a vacancy on the Tourism Committee, and since this nominee is in my district, I would like to appoint Jaron Hayes for the Civic Organization category for the Tourism Committee.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
And last but not least, I had spoken to Elodie earlier, and I'm going to probably butcher the name also. And she had expressed interest, as I had put up a flyer of all the different positions that we have open on our boards. And she expressed interest to being on the Landfill Advisory Committee, and she seems very passionate about it. And that's one of those committees that we can't find a lot of volunteers. So I would like to nominate Elodie Shojinaga to be on the Landfill Advisory Committee.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a couple of talking points I'd like to hit on this evening, but I'll start off first. I'd like to make a nomination to the Smoot Library Board of Trustees and nominate Mr. Weldon Burt Jr. for appointment.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
So Sunday, I attended a meeting with Fairview Beach residents at the home of Mr. Mike Bennett and his wife Gloria, along with my colleague, Ms. Kupka, and Sheriff Giles and Deputy Weston. They conveyed some concerns that they had. I think it was a very fruitful discussion. It was good to interact with constituents, and that's the way it works. You know, you contact your local representative and you schedule a sit down and chat. That's what local government's all about. That's the difference between Congress, Senate, federal government, even state level. We're your neighbors. We're subject to the same ordinances and laws that we pass. We're subject to those as well. So it's always good to have a conversation with your representatives and from our standpoint with our constituents. Many people are familiar with what's going on at Potomac Overlook and the development over there. When I came to office, that was a very contentious issue, was the zoning by right development of Potomac Overlook. And I did make a promise at that point to the residents of Potomac Landing that throughout this development, I would continue to monitor the situation and see what stormwater runoff and impacts from the development would be on current residents. I have kept true to my word on that throughout these last 3.5 years. And following the rains that Mr. Stonehill described in his district, I took a drive to Potomac Landing and up and down Potomac Drive and looked at the impacts from the rain, and the stormwater ran off as expected and as it should. So I'm very, very happy to have seen that. I will like to read an email from Chief Moody that he asked me to pass along. Our crews will be conducting live fire training drills at this residential property located at 3481 Belvedere Drive. This property is facing the Potomac River and can be easily seen from the river. It is over 10,000 square feet and has a 4-car garage. He's attached a few pictures. We will be conducting live fire training for all 3 of our shifts along with Naval District of Washington Fire. This will occur starting tomorrow, Thursday, and next Monday. On Monday, we will be burning the entire structure, and the owner will be on site to demolish it soon after. We have been working with the owner for several months to conduct this training. The future plan for this property and the owner is to build a new residence. I bring this to your attention because it is on the Potomac River, and it will probably be very visible. So I want people to be aware, and my colleagues to be aware that this is going on, to try and limit the calls to 911 or anything for this exercise. So to public comment, thank you to everybody who came out tonight. First off, a vote never happened in closed session. The board came out and we are looking to see what the cost would be to relocate the Confederate Memorial. A vote never took place with a definitive that we are moving the memorial. We are looking at the cost. Now, I am of the particular opinion, speaking for myself, that we should relocate all of the artifacts in front of the current courthouse. And the reason being is we do not know what the future of that courthouse is. We are currently building a new courthouse. We do not know if this current courthouse is going to be a future museum. Is it going to be future county office space? Or is it going to be torn down because it's inhabitable? We don't know yet. So to protect the integrity of all the memorials and to make sure that they still remain accessible to the public, I believe that the cemetery would be the appropriate place for these memorials to be displayed. And I think that should make everybody happy, and that would be our due diligence with that. And then as far as the Ralph Bunche High School, I understand this keeps coming up, and at this point, I would be interested in pursuing or looking at another RFP, but as it stands right now with Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center, none of the benchmarks have been met. There is no relationship formally with the county, and we are basically starting from scratch. I bring that up because that is one of many county properties within King George County. And if those who pay attention to the school board, and I happen to do that because the school board accounts for over 50% of the county's budget. So the school board in their CIP discussions at their last meeting was talking about a new preschool and the need of a new elementary school. Just the preschool that was presented was a price tag of nearly $16 million. So with that in mind, I would say that right now, any county investment into something that isn't serving our current population and our current students would be folly. I believe that we need to start planning and looking at what our real needs are to serve our citizens on a day-to-day basis. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have at this point. Thank
you, Mr. Bush. So I want to start out, I do have a written report, but I want to start by thanking everyone who came out for public comment tonight. Mr. Shelton, the first thing I would like to do is I will reread the statement that was read at the conclusion of that meeting. With consensus of the Board of Supervisors, I direct staff to communicate with Historyland Memorial Park regarding relocation of the Confederate Memorial to determine the cost of the relocation and to work with community groups to raise the necessary funding. I will reiterate what my comments stated. There was no vote taken in closed session. Mr. Ashton, I too want to thank you for coming out and providing public comment and also reading Mr. Bushrod's statement as well. As I just said, I read the statement again, and yes, at the end of the statement, it said and to work with community groups to raise the necessary funding. I will note that in previous public comment, your organization said, let us move forward together. And we are willing to do that. I wrote that down. It was May 18th, and I put quotation marks because I was very struck by what Mr. Bushrod said, because we do need to move forward together. So I will own it. I don't mind telling you, I did reach out to Mr. Bushrod to see if he had any resources in the community. He had any suggestions of any groups or companies that had equipment that might like to donate their services. I will own that. I did that. So that's where we're coming from with regard to that. We do want to move forward together as a community to accomplish what it is that we're set out to do, but no public vote has been taken at this time. I think later in the county administrator report, there may be some more information. If you want to stick around for that, that would be great. It will probably be enlightening. Ms. Stonehill, thank you for your comments about the possible relocation of the memorial. And with regard to the grant application, yes, I did acknowledge the three elected, well, two of them are elected and one is appointed by the governor, I guess. But yes, we did receive letters of support. I did personally request those. We did also receive a letter of support from the Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center. I can tell you that when I sat down with staff and read through their grant application, staff's recommendation was at that time not to include the letter of support from the Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center because there was no option agreement. There was no option agreement in place at that time, and therefore we could not rely on a public-private partnership. We can't say that to the National Park Service if we don't actually have one. And so I don't mind telling you that I don't believe that your letter of support went on in that packet. I will have to check. I think at the time it was proposed to me was that the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association also provided a letter of support, and I believe that was to be included in the packet. But I would ask Mr. Cusenberry, could you follow up with staff and confirm what was actually filed on grants.gov, please? Thank you. All right. Let me move on. I also attended the Friends of the Rappahannock event on June 5th at Echo Dell Farm, and want to reiterate what Mr. Stonehill stated about appreciation for that organization and for the hosts. Sunday, June 13th, did also attend the meeting with Mr. Bush with some Fairview Beach residents to discuss quality of life concerns. I would like to commend our Department of Fire, Rescue, and Emergency Services, and specifically our Special Rescue Team, consisting of Battalion Chief Jay Hinson, Lieutenant Ryan Pissarra, Technician Philip Carter, and Driver-Operator Stephen Self, for their extraordinary, selfless action and teamwork with multiple jurisdictions and agencies in rescuing 2 occupants of a vehicle overcome with water due to flash flooding on Friday, June 11 at the Westmoreland and Richmond County line. County investments in our personnel and equipment answered the mutual aid call of a neighboring jurisdiction and saved 2 lives, and perhaps sometime they will return the favor. I would reiterate, as Mr. Stonehill did, we are in the stormy season, no doubt. As a reminder, you can report road problems to VDOT at my.vdot.virginia.gov. I wish to make an appointment to the Germanna Community College Board. I move to appoint Mr. Wayne Bushrod to the Germanna Community College Board.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. And Mr. Stonehill touched on the litter cleanup in his district, hosted by Friends of the Rappahannock and county staff. And one other thing, I want to mention Belgrove Plantation will host a river paddle with Friends of the Rappahannock on Saturday, August 7th from 9 to 11 a.m. And you can visit Belgrove Plantation's Facebook page to sign up for that. It is not free. There is a fee to do so. And that is all I have. Sorry, we will move on to consent agenda.
Move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Do we have any constitutional officers here this evening? No. Okay. Report of the county attorney, Mr. Britton.
Just one matter, Madam Chair. There is a routine deed of subdivision, dedication, vacation, and easement regarding Hop Yard, tax map numbers 23-3-A4 and 31-1B-A-7 between Payne Street LLC, the trustees, the Service Authority, in King George County, as well as the Hop Yard Farm Homeowners Association. This same deed was presented as well to the Service Authority just a few minutes ago, and they authorized you as the chair to sign it on their behalf, conditioned upon page 15 being signed by Mr. Peterson. One of the trustees has not yet signed. They need to sign in advance. Community Development is here as well if there are any questions. We've reviewed this. It's in the correct form. All of the citations are correct. I've reviewed it as well. There's a concomitant subdivision agreement as well that I would ask in a separate motion to allow the county administrator to sign. It is an appropriate form and has been reviewed and requires a bond of about $400,000 to make the required improvements under the subdivision ordinance. So if you have any questions, the community development's here, I can try and answer them as well, but it's one of the deeds of easement and dedication that you sign routinely on any large subdivision so that we can move forward. And then the subdivision agreement is in proper form as well. You don't need to sign that, Madam Chair. It would be direct authorizing county administrator. So it'll be two separate motions.
Questions for Mr. Britton from members?
Madam Chair, if it was to be a motion on the deed of subdivision, I would suggest that it would be to authorize the chair to execute the deed of subdivision, dedication, vacation, and easement between Payne Street LLC, the trustees, United Bank, the Hop Yard Homeowners Association, and King George County, Virginia, for tax map numbers 23-3-A4 and 31-1B-A7, and for the clerk to sign as well, conditioned upon the first signature of page 15 of Trustee Peterson.
So moved. Thank you, Mr. Britton.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Madam Chair, if there were to be a second motion regarding the subdivision agreement, I would suggest authorizing the county administrator to sign the County of King George subdivision agreement dated May 25th, 2021 by and between Payne Street LLC and King George County, Virginia, to covenant and agree no cost to the county prior to May 31st, 2024 to construct and approve the county all physical improvements required by the subdivision ordinance and or shown on the subdivision plan as approved by the agent, and with a bond in an amount not less than $394,784 as presented.
So moved.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Britton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing further.
All right, we'll move on to presentations and I'm sorry, we don't have any presentations or reports. Action items then, 06-12, Department of Community Development, case number 21-02-E01, special exception permit request made by Telecom Capital Group on behalf of Ronnie V. Posey, owner, for a telecommunication facility consisting of a 195-foot monopole, plus a 4-foot lightning rod and 60-foot by 60-foot equipment compound. Access off Hobson Lane, State Route 659, parcel owned by Ronnie V. Posey, tax map 16, parcel 21, 18.4 acres, zoned A2 Rural Agricultural District. Mr. Pancotti.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors. I am Louis Pancotti, Senior Planner, and I'm here to seek an action on Special Exception Case 21-02-EO1. This case is a request for a special exception to construct and operate a telecommunication facility. Per Section 2.3.4 of the zoning ordinance, this use is permitted only by special exception in A2. The facility and application must meet the requirements outlined in Section 4.12 Standards for Telecommunication Facilities of the zoning ordinance. The proposed facility will consist of a 195-foot monopole with a 4-foot lightning rod for an overall height of 199 feet and a 60-foot by 60-foot equipment compound. The facility will be located on parcel 21 on tax map 16 in the Janesville Road District. This parcel is zoned A2 and is 18.4 acres in size. Direct access will be provided off of Hobson Lane or State Route 659. I have included the draft conditions, which could be subject to change in the future, the application, the site plan, and the applicant's statement of justification and the applicable zoning ordinance section in your packet. So per Section 5.4 of the zoning ordinance, the board may at its discretion refer the matter to the Planning Commission for a recommendation. I will now request that a decision on whether the board would like to forward case number 21-02-EO1 to the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing and provide a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, or for the Board of Supervisors to schedule a public hearing to hear case number 21-02-EO1. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, and I believe the applicant is also online should you have any questions for them.
Thank you, sir. First, questions for staff from our members. Anyone? Ms. Bender?
I drove down that road. Is it that open land area behind where the Whedon store was? If you know where I'm talking about.
I'm not 100% sure, but when I drove by, it's fully wooded.
Okay.
Where the facility will go.
Thank you.
Mr. Bush? No questions? Okay. Any questions for the applicant? And I would just remind members of the board that we're just looking at the recommended action tonight, whether we retain it or we refer it to the Planning Commission. Okay. So I don't have any questions, but I would like to note regarding the special exception permit request by Telecom Capital Group, action item 06-12. I am in receipt of a petition from Mr. John Allen and neighbors regarding same, and I direct the clerk of the board that it be entered into the record of this meeting. And I provided it to Mr. Cusenberry before the meeting started this evening. So with that, do we have a motion?
I move to forward case number 21-02-E01, special exception permit request made by Telecom Capital Group on behalf of Ronnie V. Posey, owner for a telecommunications facility consisting of a 195-foot monopole plus a 4-foot lightning rod and a 60-foot by 60-foot equipment compound, to the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing and provide recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Being this special exception application is in my district, I have had meetings with constituents that live near the proposed site. And as I have always stated, I am a firm believer in property rights and by right development. However, anything requiring special exception or asking for variances from the county, there needs to be a demonstration how a project could truly benefit the county. So I just wanted on the record that I have had conversations with my constituents, and I look forward to a recommendation from the Planning Commission, which will allow my constituents the opportunity to give public comment to the Planning Commission. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. All right, so we have a motion properly seconded. Anything further? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Pancotti. All right, 6-13, Department of the Registrar, resolution to request waiver from the Department of Elections for split precincts.
Would you like me to handle that, Madam?
Yes, could you please, Mr. Britton? Thank you.
I can, yes. So, the General Assembly passed a law that said that you had to consolidate split precincts for voting, but then because of reasons unbeknownst to me, they didn't get the information to the localities, I guess COVID maybe, didn't get the information, the census data to the localities in order to allow localities to be able to do that. And it doesn't look like you're going to be able to get that. The code section allows for the DOE, Department of Elections, to grant waivers, specifically to grant waivers with respect to split precincts so that you can go forward. We do have 2 split precincts in King George County, in Courthouse and Shiloh, but even if at this point you were able to get the data, it would be near impossible to secure other locations. If it was a private location, to secure leases, to find public buildings if it was not, and to move them. I've put them all in the resolution. I've gone over this with Ms. Gump as well, and my understanding is all of the localities with split precincts, including Fredericksburg and others, are in this exact same boat, and that the Department of Elections is going to be liberally granting these waivers. This resolution would ask for that, and this is required as well as the minutes. It's all set forth in the code, and I've gone through that with Ms. Gump. I also drafted this resolution on her behalf. She reviewed it twice and had, this is the final form of it. So if there were to be a motion, that motion would allow to remain 2 split precincts in Courthouse and Shiloh, and it could simply be moved to adopt the resolution to get a waiver under Virginia Code 224.2-307, allowing King George County to have split precincts in the Courthouse, Senate, and Shiloh Senate districts.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, I need a roll call vote on this, please.
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Madam Chair, I'll work with Ms. Gump to forward this. You can actually upload it. It's probably actually an easy process. This resolution, as well as the minutes and the other material required, and we'll bring back to the board when the waiver is hopefully granted.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. 6-14, Department of Finance, Professional Services Agreement for Zoning and Subdivision Ordinance Update. Ms. Turner.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Quisenberry and Mr. Britton. I'm Angela Turner, the Procurement Specialist. Subject Professional Services Agreement for Zoning and Subdivision Ordinance Update. Authorize the County Administrator to execute a professional service agreement with Berkeley Group in the amount of $159,680.90 for zoning and subdivision ordinance updates. At the February 2nd, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting, the board authorized $160,000 to be transferred from the funds balance to the general fund to contract out the updating of the zoning and subdivision ordinance. The purpose of this item is to overhaul and update the county's current zoning and subdivision ordinances. This shall include creating standard operating procedures, checklists for all applications, zoning, subdivision, and building, and redesign current applications to create an effortless application process for our customers. In March 2021, a request for proposal was issued, and in May 2021, 2 proposals were received in response to RFP 0505-2021-1400 for zoning and subdivision ordinance updates. The proposals were evaluated by a selection committee consisting of Heather Hall, Matt Britton, and Louis Pincotti. Based on the proposals, the interview, which was conducted on May 27, 2021, and additional information provided by the firm, the evaluation committee ranked the Berkeley Group as the most qualified firm for this project. I recommend that the Board of Supervisors authorize the county administrator to execute a professional service agreement for zoning and subdivision ordinance updates in the amount of $159,680.90 with the Berkeley Group, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Do I have questions for Ms. Turner from members of the board? So I'd ask, I see Ms. Hall, Director of Community Development, is here this evening. Could you come forward, please, for a moment so we can see if members have any questions for you, ma'am? Thank you. Any questions from members? No, I had one question. I hope apologize for bringing you up here, but that's why I brought you up here, because I know I had a question. So I note in the next item, the next action item is a request to execute a goods services agreement for community development software. Will whatever product the Berkeley Group develops, will it be compatible with this software that you're asking us to pay for next?
Yes, we did check with Municity, which is who we're hoping you will award that bid to, that any new forms that we come up with or new ordinances will be able to work with that new program. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, with that, I believe we're ready for a motion.
I move to authorize the county administrator to execute a professional service agreement with Berkeley Group in the amount of $159,680.90 for a zoning and subdivision ordinance update, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Turner. Are you on the next one? I thought so. Thank you. The 6-16 Department of Finance acceptance of an agreement for award terms for the U.S. Department of Treasury Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, CLFRF.
Subject: request to execute a goods services agreement for community development software. Community development needs a programming system that offers a variety of features and uses that will enhance the capabilities of the Department of Community Development. The software package should be focused on community development's needs for processing and tracking permits related to building permitting, inspections, and other community development functions. On May 26, 2021, bids were received and publicly open via GoToMeeting for community development software. A total of 3 bids were received. The low bid was submitted by General Code LLC. County staff have completed and reviewed the bids and have determined that the low bidder is a qualified, responsible, and responsive contractor. The bid amount is $82,635. I recommend that the Board of Supervisors authorize the county administrator to issue a notice of award to General Code LLC for community development software in the amount of $82,635 and authorize the county administrator to execute a goods services agreement subject to approval by the county attorney. Funding in the amount of $98,635 was approved in the fiscal year 2021 CIP.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. And I just want to clarify for the record, I jumped ahead when I read what the description was because I was already thinking about this goods services agreement from the question I asked Ms. Hall. So let me just clarify. Right now, we are on action item 6-15, Department of Finance, request to execute a goods services agreement for community development software as Ms. Turner presented. Thank you. Any questions from members? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the county administrator to issue a notice of award to General Code LLC for community development software in the amount of $82,635 and authorize the county administrator to execute a goods services agreement subject to approval by the county attorney.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Turner. All right, now we are on 6-16, Department of Finance, acceptance of an agreement for award terms for the U.S. Department of Treasury Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, CLFRF. Ms. Hahn, will you be presenting this evening? Director of Finance. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I come before you tonight to present the agreement that was included in your packet that goes over that we have to sign if we want to accept the funds that are being offered by the United States Treasury. That these funds will support urgent COVID-19 response efforts to continue to decrease spread of the virus and bring the pandemic under control. Replace any lost revenue for eligible state, local, and territorial and tribal governments to strengthen support for vital public services and help retain jobs. Support immediate economic stabilization for households and businesses and address systematic public health and economic challenges that have contributed to the unequal impact of the pandemic. According to the U.S. Treasury website, King George County has been allocated $5,212,578 for the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, the CLFRF. And those funds, the first step in that is to execute an agreement between the county and the U.S. Treasury. That agreement is included in your packet and has been reviewed by council and as to form. So at this point, I come before you to ask you to authorize the county administrator to sign the agreement for award terms of the U.S. Department of Treasury CLFRF and submit for award, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney, and he has already reviewed it.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Questions from members? Yes, no?
I just have one clarification.
Ms. Bender?
Thank you. This is also known as the American Rescue Plan, correct?
That's correct.
Because when you look at this, people would think it was CARES Act 2 or something, but just for clarification, it's the American Rescue Plan, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Bush, any questions? Do I have a motion?
I move to authorize the county administrator to sign the agreement for award terms for the U.S. Department of Treasury CLFRF and submit for award subject to approval as to form by county attorney.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hahn. All right, action item 6-17, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, Tourism Funding Application, Jazz in the Country. And we have Kim Wilson here on behalf of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism to start. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. The first one I will be representing is the event for Jazz in the Country, Falling in Love with Mount Bethel. Mount Bethel is a 100-year-old treasure. Jazz in the Country's goal is to raise awareness through an intense advertising campaign of the historic nature and heritage of Mount Bethel, the county, accumulating in a public music event. It will give jazz lovers an opportunity to support what is hoped to become an annual event. The Jazz Festival will be held August 28, 2021. Jazz in the Country supports tourism by raising awareness of the county and specifically targets visitors outside the county. The target market area will extend regionally beyond King George, Virginia to include Southern Maryland and Washington, D.C. Jazz in the Country was a well-received event in King George, which debuted in 2019. Jazz in the Country is requesting $20,000 from the Tourism Fund in support of this event. TAC recommendations after review recommends the board approve $15,500 funding for the Jazz in the Country Falling in Love with Mount Bethel, and staff also agrees with TAC recommendation. And we do have representatives of Jazz in the Country representatives for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Any questions for Ms. Wilson?
What was the 4,500 that was not recommended, line item wise?
The 4,500, I believe that was for the one thing I didn't write down.
So, Ms. Wilson,
yes.
Please allow me. I believe Ms. Hayes and Mr. Baird are here, and they are both members of the Tourism Advisory Committee. Would either of them wish to come forward and clarify what it was?
I believe it was for part of the entertainment.
Mr. Baird, would you like to speak to that, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. As you said, the 4,500 not directly related to advertising, independent more related to FEMA and capital spending.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. Mr. Robinson, I believe, Larry Robinson is here on behalf of the Jazz in the Country organization. Sir, would you like to add anything or clarify anything? Please come forward, sir. Go ahead to the podium, to the microphone. Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. We had earmarked.
Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. Can you state your name, please, just so it gets recorded in the meeting minutes?
My name is
Thank you.
Joan Waters, board member of Jazz in the Country Incorporated. The 4,500 would have been earmarked for ongoing marketing coordinator, and we just foresee this continuing year after year. And with social media being the order of the day, that would give us opportunity to continue encouraging tourism in King George and introducing more people to Mount Bethel as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Additional questions?
I don't think so.
Go ahead, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this would be for the TAC. I'm looking at miscellaneous photo, video, tables, chairs, $1,250. Is this to actually have that as infrastructure within the event, or is this to help with the marketing of the event? Can you elaborate on that line item, sir?
Well, actually, I believe that's one of the line items that we cut. That plus some staffing to maintain social media presence. We felt we could support advertising within our mission, but per prior direction of the board, we didn't believe that capital expense or equipment was within our scope, so we limited our funding recommendation to pure marketing, advertising, that type of thing.
Okay, because from what I'm looking at, that is included in the total that's being presented for authorization. And that sum would be $1,250.
Well, actually, if you look at it, it's a combination of things here. It's, the taking and sale of photos, videos, and so forth. And yes, there would be some setup involved for that use, a specific use as opposed to seating and tables for use in the presentation. It was more handout material, booth space, if you would, or display for handing out stuff.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, sir.
Sorry, I wasn't clear.
So can I ask the event coordinators, can we get straight from you all what a better answer to that question too? Are we all talking the same language here, the purpose of those tables?
We are, and it would also include a videographer who would hopefully live stream parts of the festival on Facebook and on our website.
Gotcha. And then, so that's a separate thing than the marketing, photography, video, $1,200. That's something you're going to do ahead of to try to market it.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Bush. I had that same question about that $1,250. I also have a question because I note that your categories or your breakdown in your budget for newspaper ads, radio / Google, Facebook ads, and social media boost break out by month, and we're halfway through June, and you have a breakdown that when I add up all of June, it comes to about $2,000. I took a look at your Facebook page, and I did note that you have done a few posts, but it really doesn't cost anything to do those unless you boost them. So have you done any boosted Facebook posts in June yet?
We have not, waiting on the decision here, and hopefully would be able to ramp that up like 30 times. So the boost may not cost anything, but the actual ads do. And we can target certain areas, here in Virginia, Maryland, and DC and beyond. And that also adds to the cost depending on the area and the length of the boost of the ad. Mm-hmm.
since I said that comes to 2,000 and June is halfway gone, I would be looking at coming in half of that 2,000 for June, spread however.
Oh, we could spend it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I
We
just,
could spend, if not made up, excuse me, in June, certainly in July and August. August being a very pivotal month, the few weeks before the event.
okay. Any other questions from members? Do I have a motion? Actually, Mr. Granger, before we do that,
Yeah.
so that we know where, we know the funding source, Ms. Wilson, can you advise us on the balance of the current fiscal year TAC fund as well as the overall balance so we know where we're going to pull the money from, please?
So last fiscal year allocation, we have $4,496 left. And for the overall assets, that is $640,843.
I'm sorry, say that one more time. What was that number?
$640,843.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. So do we have a motion?
I move to approve $15,500 in funding for the Jazz and the Country Falling in Love with Mount Bethel, which would include the marketing website emails, marketing radio, marketing Google ads, marketing Facebook, marketing newspaper ads, marketing photography video, miscellaneous photo, video, tables, chairs, etc., printing, roadside banners, flyers, event programs for a total of $15,500.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go
So
ahead, Mr. Bush.
while I support this and I wish them the best of luck in this venture being successful, this will be the second iteration of this event. The first time, it really didn't meet expectations as far as attendance. So this will be the second one. I would request an after action to get numbers of attendees and how well this was, what the outreach was. Did we bring people in from other localities? I'd like to get that after action so that next year and hopefully in subsequent years, as this becomes successful, we have a general idea of what our return on investment would be. So that would just be my request, is for an after action report to be delivered to the board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. So I would note on page 9 of the application, there is a 2019 report to the King George Board of Supervisors. The PowerPoint slides are contained therein. It is dated August 24th, 2019, and they did at that time provide an after action report for that first event. So you can take a look at that and see what the breakdown is. Any further discussion, Mr. Britton?
Madam Chair, you pointed this out, so I'm sure you're going to make an amendment, but the balance of the fund, there's an artifact. You'll recall last year you had me do a review, right? So we know that the balance of the fund, there's an artifact of $90,000 gets put into the budget every year, which is traceable back to something that I don't really think applies anymore. I'm not sure what it is, but so I didn't hear in the motion, I may have missed it, that the balance would be taken from the reserve to authorize them to, or to appropriate the remainder from next year's TAC appropriation, or because there's only $4,500 left.
So July 1st is in 2 weeks. What is the preference of the board with regard to that?
I think that the motion could either be, sorry, you said preference of the board, but
thank you,
the
Mr.
motion
Britton.
could either be to authorize the balance from the reserve, or to take the remaining balance and from the 2021-22.
Thank you. Let me ask staff, Ms. Wilson, does the department have a preference with regard to other tourism activities that your department might also care to engage in 21-22 for funding?
Yes, I would recommend that we take this from the reserve, because between this application and the next one that we're going to review, that's close to probably a third of that allocation.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. All right.
I'd like to make amendment to my motion to pull the remainder, the additional 11,000 from the tourism budget reserve line.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Next item, 6-18, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, Tourism Funding Application, King George Fall Festival.
This is the funding application for the King George Fall Festival 62nd anniversary. The King George Fall Festival is celebrated its 67th anniversary this year. It is an annual community event held the second week of October. This will be a fun and free event for the community and its visitors. The festival includes a parade through King George's downtown, craft vendor show, food fair, and queen pageant. A timeline of events is listed below. September 25th will be the pageant, the festival's on the 9th, and then they will do the 5K run walk on October 10th. King George Fall Festival Weekend supports tourism by bringing in people from outside the community and thereby increases local business sales and local hotel visits. Additionally, it supports and enhances the relationships between various nonprofit organizations and strengthens our community. The King George Fall Festival Committee also works with local businesses to market our business community's goods and services through the King George Fall Festival program. The King George Fall Festival is requesting $23,000 for advertising with Freelance Star and local radio, printing of signs and banners, carnival rides, petting zoo, carnival games, various prizes, clown, band, and stage. Multiple forms of entertainment, tents, tables, chairs, race expense, and printing of programs are included in this amount. The King George EDA has agreed to put $1,000 toward the printing of programs to offset advertising for King George businesses. TAC recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve $23,000 funding for the King George Fall Festival against the Tourism Fund. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors fund $11,000 of that $23,000.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Before we move on, are there questions for Ms. Wilson regarding the presentation? All right, and I note again that Ms. Hayes and Mr. Baird are here on behalf of the Tourism Advisory Committee. And also, I believe Ms. Dee Strauss is here on behalf of the King George Fall Festival Committee if members have any additional questions. Mr. Granger?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, for staff, I see that general activities, which includes games, petting zoo, face painting, and free children's activities, was an included recommendation from staff, but like carnival rides was not included. And so what's the justification for including those activities? I know the dollar figure is not as big, but they seem to be similar in the idea that they're activities to do things.
I think it may have been price point on that one. I know that the others are lend toward the marketing and getting the word out and making sure that it's a well-advertised event. From the application from 2019, however, Carnival Rides was approved.
It was.
Yes.
I know. I am aware of that. I'm kind of inclined more to pull away from those kinds of activities. I would say maybe this is again a discussion as opposed to questions, but maybe remove general activities as well. But I'll leave it to my colleagues to ask questions or discuss as they see fit.
Mr. Stonehill, do you have any questions for Ms. Wilson? Ms. Bender? Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in your presentation, you mentioned local hotel visits. So do you have any metrics or data that shows that we have people coming from out of town that are actually staying in hotels to attend the King George County Fall Festival?
That would have been provided in their after action report from 2019, but I do not have that with me.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Ms. Strauss, can you provide any further information regarding Mr. Bush's question? Because I had the same question as well. You have any idea how many folks come and stay in the hotels around here?
The folks that would come to stay in the hotels, we have several vendors that would stay overnight. They come from a distance and they might stay overnight. I know that Ms. Deem works with the vendors and provides them with the information as to the local hotels. So she has more of a handle on that. And there again, in the after action report, I believe that's noted. As far as people who are coming in to participate in the Fall Festival, not as vendors, but as actual guests, you would have family members that would come in and they might not have room in the house, so they would stay in a local hotel as well. Guests and honorees would be coming back. I know that one of our guests that we've invited, they'll stay in a hotel when they come. So you have those folks that will be coming. Is it thousands and thousands of people staying in a hotel? No, sir. And no, ma'am. But that activity that goes on with the Fall Festival is such a community-oriented event that brings people and family members from outside of the area in, but also with the advertising we do, brings other people from outside of our area, from our greater region, to come in and see this festival, just like you and I go to other festivals in surrounding areas. The activities that go on at the festival also draw the people. And one of the big things is the multitude of activities that we have for children. And when you have small children and you're trying to entertain them, the more you have available, like the games where there are free prizes and free games and free rides, then that provides more time that will be spent at the festival. Thus, those other vendors will have more of an opportunity to sell their wares. And then the folks that come will share more about what a great experience they had. And from that, we'll see more people coming in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. Does anyone have any additional questions while Ms. Strauss is here? Go ahead, Ms. Bender.
I do. The band in the stage, what is that? You were going to bring in live bands?
Yes, every year we've had live entertainment. And so looking at this from last year's lens, when it was going to be a bigger event because of the celebration of the 300th anniversary, we carried on from that, continuing with our thinking that, okay, first time ever, Fall Festival didn't happen. So in our letter to our news release to the Freelance Star, we said in that we would come back this year bigger and better. And that is what we want to do. But we cannot do it without your help and support financially.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Strauss. Anyone from the Tourism Committee have anything else to add?
Address Mr. Granger with the rides and whatever. So
Ms. Hayes,
yes.
State your name, please, again, so we
Jaren
make
Hayes.
sure everybody
I'm
gets
sorry.
recorded. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry, Jaren Hayes with the Tourism Advisory Council. The one thing I wanted to point out was that the decision to make this event just happened in the last 45 days or so. So getting sponsorship for this event is really a challenge. A lot of local businesses have already spent their sponsorship dollars, or they're getting back on their feet right now. So this is an opportunity for them not only to be back out in the public eye, because they'll be allowed to advertise and to be at this event, but it's difficult for them at this point with the event, 90 days away or so, to go out and solicit sponsorship. That's something that will pick up again next year in earnest the way it has in the past. So that's what the council, I think, what we were really thinking with this, because it was such a challenge for them, that we felt like it was worth it to fund the event that's really the signature event in the county.
Thank you. And did anyone have any further questions for Ms. Hayes? No? All right. Is there a preference for a motion?
I move that the Board of Supervisors fund $10,000, which would include radio newspaper ads, liability insurance, tents, tables, chairs, printing expenses, sanctioned race, signs, and banners, for a total of $10,000.
Is there a second? Would anyone like to introduce an alternate motion?
I would like to introduce an alternate motion. I would like to introduce a motion to fund all, what's the fund original, $23,000 for the Fall Festival. Yeah, isn't that?
That is the original request, yes.
The original request of the
Original
committee is $23,000. Is there a second? Would anyone like to offer an alternate motion? And I'll have one too. Mr. Stonehill.
I move that the Board of Supervisors fund $11,000. That would include radio news, liability, tents, tables, chairs, printing, sanction rides, signs, banners, and general activities.
Is there a second? Mr. Bush, would you like to offer a motion, sir?
No, but instead of us going through motions, I would request a brief discussion period if that's acceptable, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Thank you. So I've attended the Fall Festival over a few years since I've been in this county. And it is the county signature event. Last year was unfortunate that things couldn't happen. But previously, and I've been very vocal about this in the past, the Fall Festival seems to be the same thing year after year after year. And I've always been vocal, what more can we do? What can we do out of the ordinary? We have a parade, we got a petting zoo, and we got a craft fair in the gym. And it's year after year after year. And it's great. The community comes together. But what are we doing to bring interest into our county and say, those people in King George got their stuff together? So I think that the committee, and these are all volunteers, and thank you very much for what you do. I think you're actually starting to look at that through this request. I don't think Ms. Bender's motion was really that off. Looking at the balance in our funds, and for the taxpayers, please understand, the tourism funds cannot be used to offset other things. It can strictly be used for these categorical things. So it's not like because we're spending the money on this, we're shortchanging somebody else. This is the only thing by law or things in this category that we could apply these funds to. And you heard the reserve balances earlier. I think something of this nature gives the taxpayers in King George County a return on their investment. This is their tax dollars, so it gives the people of King George the opportunity to enjoy their tourism dollars. It gives the committee the opportunity to enhance, and I mean this, I don't want to see status quo, same old Fall Festival. Enhance it, then I would be inclined to support Ms. Bender's initial motion.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Ms. Bender.
Why I supported the 23,000 is because King George and the surrounding community of the United States has gone through a lot. And this would be a way to give back to every citizen in this community, small children that didn't get to go to school, you know, a nice way to say, here, this is what we're doing for you as our constituents, as the citizens of King George. We're going to bring back the Fall Festival, and those that want to attend, here you go. This is a nice event. There'll be something for everyone. And that's why I voted for the $23,000, because this could not only bring back maybe old bands that come. Everybody in the community could benefit from coming to this festival and all these activities. And as Mr. Bush said, it is looking forward for the fall festival. They've got different ideas here, and I think it would bring in a lot of people, more than we might expect. And that's why I was looking at the $23,000. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Stonehill?
Mr. Bush, that was very good. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been coming here to, I don't know, 20 years of Fall Festival. And it has gotten a little stale. You know, other parts of the country or parts of Virginia, their big thing is lawn parties, and they're all over the western part of Virginia, and they're very, very well attended. Everybody goes there. But I would definitely like to see, like Mr. Bush said, some more things, and you know, just having much more of a unique thing for King George. And you know, and if that was the case, and you all could come up with a lot of, you know, different things to really make this stand out, I mean, I'd be willing to, you know, pay for all of that year they requested.
Thank you. Anyone else? So I want to remind my colleagues, as was stated, this event is 90 days out or so. The application was submitted such as it was, and if we're trying to put, pardon me if I offend any of my colleagues if I say this, demands on the organization that aren't consistent with what they said they could do for an event that's 90 days out, I don't think that's fair. And then to say, oh, well, if you do this, well, yeah, then if you promise to do this tonight, I'll give you $23,000. Personally, I don't think that's fair. Where I was coming from was I was looking at $10,000. I was eliminating the general activities of $1,000, games, petting zoo, face painting, etc., and kicking the $6,000 for the band and stage. So I was looking at $16,000 is where I was at, which is higher than the staff recommendation of $11,000, but still a little bit below the full request of $23,000. Anyone have anything else? Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like seeing the carnival rides. You know, that's something that we really haven't seen in the past in King George. You know, you can go to the state fair and go on carnival rides, and for some of our citizens, the children in this county, that's their only experience with carnival rides is if their parents take them to the state fair. If we could have carnival rides here in King George and the $6,000, I'd like to see that. I really would. So I still stand by the $23,000 that Ms. Bender recommended earlier, but we do not have a successful motion on the floor at this point. Thank you.
So Ms. Strauss, could you come forward again, please? So I'm looking, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your patience as well. I'm looking at the application, and it says this year's KGF, I'm not gonna read it all. I'm just gonna ask you, are you having actual carnival rides at this year's fall festival?
The rides that we will have are similar to the ones in the past. It is not going to be a huge Ferris wheel that's gigantuan. That won't fit in the parking lot at the high school. There's, from what I understand, similar to last year, it's a mix of a mechanical bull, there's a train, there's a whirly gig that they bring in to get in. And I don't ride rides, so even for little kids. There's a gaming station that we had this a few years ago. A gaming station, it's like a trailer, and the kids can go in and play the games on the computer games and such. Our representative with King George Parks and Rec usually handles all of that, so it was a matter of what was available with the amusement company, with the carnival ride company, as far as what would be coming in. So, Mr. Bush, when you're thinking it's going to be the Ferris wheel like at the state fair. No, sir, it's not. But these things, as everything else, continue to become more expensive. And we are the 90 days out. We didn't make our decision until the first week of May, and that's when we put forth this request. So we have painfully tried to make this decision as quick as possible, but our meeting in the first week of May was set.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. Mr. Bush.
So thank you for the clarity, Ms. Strauss, and thank you, Ms. Kupka, for bringing that up. I was thinking this was carnival rides, like a tilt-a-whirl and things of that nature.
They won't fit in the
So with that, if we don't fund this as suggested, that means we will not have those things you just stated, which means instead of us enhancing, we're actually regressing from where we were the previous year. So I really don't want to see that happen. So I would still be along the lines of fully funding the request. However, I would request that next year, and you don't have to worry about me reviewing this because I'm not running for re-election, but I would like to see carnival rides at our fall festival. I mean, King George, we're the gateway to the Northern Neck, et cetera, et cetera. We're competing with Fredericksburg and all these other people. We're A2, 95% in this county. We're agricultural, so we got room for carnival rides in this county. I would like to see that in the future. And if we're gonna have a fall festival, let's go all out and let's do it. If we're gonna call this, tourism, well, let's actually do some tourism and not just bring in our family and people that live in the county. And I mean, we're talking about hotels. That should encompass more than just vendors. That should be people saying, man, I'm going to that fall festival in King George, taking my kids get a pumpkin, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm blabbering on. Thank you very much for that clarity, but I still support my initial statement in funding the initial request.
Ms. Kupka?
Yes.
That's a good question.
Mr. Granger.
Mr. Britton, we've had 3 motions die on the floor. I know the individuals who made those motions cannot remake those motions. I know Ms. Bender was the one who made the motion for the full funding. I'm getting the impression that Mr. Bush is on board with that now. He could re-motion that motion, and then Ms. Bender would, if she wanted to, have the opportunity to second it. Is that a correct statement? Okay, thank you.
Yes, those motions did die for lack of a second, so the movement couldn't bring it up. I would, Madam Chair, if I could interject, I think you're going to run into the same thing, so I would say that the motion should state what year the funding is taken, either from the reserve or from the 2021-22.
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that the King George County Board of Supervisors allocate $23,000 to the King George Fall Festival from reserve TAC funding.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for your patience.
Madam Chair.
All right, County Administrator's Report 6-20. Mr. Cusenberry, thank you for your patience as well, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item I want to report on is the relocation of the monument. I've prepared a request for proposals to do that work, and at least to find out what the cost and the time and the scope of work and the action plan is to do that project. So I plan to advertise that request for proposals this week. There's typically a 30-day turnaround timeframe, so I would recommend that we keep it on the street for 30 days after we advertise.
Do I have any questions? Ms. Bender?
Is this an RFI or RFP?
This would be an RFP. This is a request for proposals.
Okay, because I remember in the past I was a stickler about that, because that's showing intent. Thank you for clarification.
Any other questions? Do you need a board motion for that? sir?
No, that's in my authority
can-
to
yep.
advertise that, and there's no action until it comes back to the board.
And it was just like what happened in the Service Authority meeting earlier
Exactly.
tonight. Okay,
Exactly.
thank you, sir.
The
Carry
next
on.
item I want to report on, over the last month or so, I've been reviewing documents and emails and correspondence relating to the Ralph Bunch project, and I wanted to provide the board an update with some of my findings. So I have a few slides I want to go over for the board. On July 19th, 2018, almost 3 years ago, an RFP was issued for repurposing of the Ralph Bunch High School property. That proposal closed on August 20, 2018, and there was one proposal received, and that was from Melty Ice LLC. On September 20th, staff met with the Melty Ice LLC team, and following that, a draft letter of intent was sent to the procurement manager by the county administrator to review. Following her review, the county administrator brought it to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors authorized the county administrator to negotiate and execute an LOI with the Ralph Bunch Arts and Humanities Center. The draft was sent to RBAHC on November the 14th. Then between November and December of 2018, there was some correspondence regarding a possible conflicts of interest. On December 3rd, another draft LOI was sent to RBAHC. And then on December 17th, the procurement manager had some concerns and she removed herself from the project, and the county administrator took the lead for the project. On May 7th, 2019, RBAHC provided the Board of Supervisors a presentation regarding their proposal. Then on May 21st, the board authorized county administrator to execute an LOI. On June 27th, he sent a LOI to RBAHC, and that was executed on July the 3rd, 2019. Then on March 26, 2020, there was a letter to the county administrator from RBAHC. Now, of course, we were in the middle of COVID at this time, requesting that due to the COVID impacts, the timeline will not start until the economy demonstrates forward momentum. And the county administrator responded back. Let me read you what he said. And he said, "We will, of course, be flexible given the current state of affairs." And he responded with that response on March 31st. And that was the same time there was an email to the county administrator from RBAHC with a draft real estate purchase option agreement. Then there was a lot of emails going back and forth regarding the real estate purchase agreement and such. On October 22nd, there was an email to the county attorney from the county administrator requesting his review of the draft real estate purchase option agreement. Then between November 2020 and February 2021, there was additional correspondence regarding the real estate purchase option agreement. On March the 4th, 2021, there was a letter to RBAHC from the interim county administrator stating that the LOI had expired. On March the 10th, RBAHC sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors regarding the interim county administrator's letter. And then on April 19, 2021, there was a letter to the Board of Supervisors and interim county administrator from RBAHC asking for the board to consider 4 items to optimize success of the project. That was to create a public-private partnership, allow a sign to be placed on the property, give permit fees, and to provide operating cost assistance once the facility was up and running. So it's been almost 3 years since the initial RFP was issued. There's been no real estate purchase agreement executed. The LOI has expired. So staff is looking for some direction for the board as to what the next steps would be and the board's direction regarding this.
Thank you, Mr. Kusenberry. Questions from members? Ms. Bender, I'm going to start with you. This building is in your election district?
I have one question, Mr. Britton. and this might be, I just thought of a reading that is, and it's been brought up several times in public comment. Do you have to have an actual agreement to solicit funds? Or is that something out of your preview?
You mean, does this board
Yeah,
have to have an,
no.
well, I wouldn't be able to answer that. That would
Yeah, I know. I just thought of
that'd
it.
be
I
giving
apologize for bringing
private
that.
advice, and you would have to know the structure, foundation, endowment,
that makes sense.
501c3, 501c.
Very complicated.
It's extremely complicated. I wouldn't be able, that would be against my role as county attorney to give that advice.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you go back to the beginning of this presentation? Well, let me see. That's the beginning, right? Okay, here we go. So my question is, there was an RFP issued and it was responded by Melt the Ice Incorporated. However, a draft LOI was sent to RBAHC, two separate entities. Is that problematic?
Madam Chair, would you like me to answer?
Go ahead, Mr. Britton.
No. The RFP was responded to by Melt the Ice LLC and was not awarded. It was closed and not awarded. Thereafter, I think the next slide shows that the procurement manager removed herself from the situation because she felt there was a conflict of interest, and the county administrator took it over. The RFP was never awarded, and the matter was closed. That is on our public website. We looked it up. Travis has that information. I have that information. Levita has that information. And later, an LOI completely outside of the RFP was negotiated, apparently it's before my time, but between the then county administrator and a different entity, thereby having nothing to do with the RFP. I'm not commenting on the status of the LOI, but I do know the status of the RFP. It was closed, never awarded, and had nothing to do with the LOI.
So Travis, did your timeline show an expiration date on the letter of intent?
It, well, it was on March the 10th, the March the 4th, the interim county administrator sent a letter to RBAC stating that the LOI had expired.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the LOI expired under its terms when the benchmarks, or it was voidable for failure to get an agreement, a purchase option agreement. But it was voidable if there was no purchase option agreement. I don't remember the date, but it passed October 2019 or something like that. But it was void if the the fundraising benchmarks weren't met, and there was no option on that. Mr. Hughes, interim county administrator, I forgot the date, but sent, oh, there it is, March 4th, sent a letter to that effect. Those are in the terms of the LOI.
And those benchmarks were specific and intentional by the board who put those in place because of lessons learned in prior relationships. So my last question.
They were, I wasn't there, but they were definitely specific.
Yes. So my last question, because we're only in question period right now, and I don't want to get in trouble with Ms. Kupka. My last question would be, the county administrator, he communicated to RBHC that there would be flexibility, but gave no specifics. The county administrator, however, does not speak on behalf of the board. Is that correct? That would have taken board action because the LOI was approved by the board. Any variance from that LOI would have to come from the board, not the county administrator. That wasn't a bi-direction authority that he had, correct?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Britton.
Yes, this is actually black letter law that King George County, unfortunately, Service Authority made. It's King George County Service Authority versus Presidential Tier 2, went to the Supreme Court. And what it states is that when a board must act, only a board can act, and no one, even the county administrator, the county attorney, the board chair, 2 board members can act in their stead. There are a lot of legalities with respect to this. This is a transfer of public property, requires a public hearing under 15.2-1800. In addition to that, it requires a written contract because it regards land, which is called the statute of frauds. Real property, that's correct. There are a bunch of things which require a contract. Some contracts were over 12 months, things like that, but land is one of them. Because it required a contract, the board had to ratify it in any event, even if they didn't. They did ratify it, and therefore only the board acting as a board, that means by motion and on appropriate and valid vote, could amend it. And even if the county administrator made a representation, he would not have had the authority. That's called ultra vires, beyond his authority or her authority. And that's exactly what happened. As you recall, in presidential tier 2, the director promised something. They relied on that promise, went to the Supreme Court, and they said only the board can make promises of these sort. So regardless, actually, Mr. Kusenberry showed me that email or told me about it. I can't remember from county administrators saying that they would be flexible. I don't know what that means. No one knows what that means, I don't think, sitting here. But even if it had said, I will extend the LOI benchmarks 10 years or 2 years, that would not have been effective as to against the board because you hold the public purse.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. Mr. Bush, was that the remainder of your questions? All right. Mr. Granger, do you have any questions? Mr. Stonehill? All right, what is the pleasure of the board? Staff requested a recommendation regarding the path forward. Mr. Granger.
Sure, I'll start it off. So starting back in 2018, trying to find a way to make this happen. I do know that several of the Ralph Bunch Alumni Association members, I was at that vote, spoke in opposition to moving forward with the LOI. 2 of the board members voted to not move forward with the LOI based on that input. I voted in favor of it, really trying to find a way to get something done with the school. Really like to see it get done. But that's why we did put those benchmarks in, because we recognized, you know, we've tried a couple times and it's been unsuccessful, unfortunately. And so we seem to be in a similar situation. It's gone through multiple years. It hasn't been able to negotiate an option agreement. At this point, I would move forward with an RFP and see where we can go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mr. Stonehill?
I just think we need to come up with a solution for this piece of property. I mean, it's been going on, and you know, however we decide, it's you know, the folks, the alumni are there, and they're not getting any younger, and you know, and if we're actually gonna get something done to have the folks that are still with us be able to see and enjoy, you know, we need to come up with something sooner than later.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Bender?
I'm not opposed to putting it back out for an RFP to see if there's further interest. That is one of the options, correct?
Correct. It could be an RFP, it could be an RFI.
Or an RFI. And I usually like RFIs a little better, but an RFI is okay with me too. I mean, I agree. I've talked to quite a few of the alumni who, as Mr. Stonehill said, are not getting any younger, and they would love to see something, but being able to do it on a county level, that's a lot of money. Also going with requests that will be soon be coming, so I'm not opposed to an RFI in the end.
Mr. Bush, did you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too was there when we voted. Mr. Granger pointed out, and we did put those benchmarks in for a particular reason. And I was one of those that voted in favor of this. And the Ralph Bunch Alumni Association was very vocal against this partnership. I would like to see us be able to move forward, get something done. But obviously we need to protect the interest of King George County, because that's real property that belongs to King George County. So I would like to entertain the thought of putting out another RFP, and we basically have to start over. For the record, King George County has made many attempts to get this situation rectified. And every time that those attempts have failed or stalled, it was not due to King George County's actions. It was investors or something, whoever had the interest in it, either pulled out or found out it was not feasible, profitable, et cetera, et cetera. The King George County has continued to try to get something done with this property, but we need to go through this process to get it done, because as far as our budget, we simply do not have the money to do it ourselves. So I would support an RFP.
Mr. Kusenberry, you look like you have something to say.
I was just going to, I want to get clarification if the board would like to issue an RFP or if the board would like to issue an RFI.
That was going to be my next question, because some of us are saying RFP and one of us is saying RFI. So Mr. Britton, sorry to put you on the spot, sir, can you explain again the difference to the board? What is an RFP versus what is an RFI?
Yes, Madam Chair. So basically there's, in fact, Mr. Bush mentioned earlier without his microphone on RFQ, there's basically three ways to request for quote, right? So there's basically three ways to go after something, but RFQ is a request for quote. That means how much will it cost to do X? That assumes you know what X is. That normally follows an RFI, which is a request for information, which is saying what is it that you think that we should do with this property. It's sort of a brainstorming, if you will, and people will come forward and they'll say, we think that these things should be done with the property. Does not have to set forth a formal proposal. It generally does not have a specifications and designs, and it never has an amount. A RFP is a request for proposals, and that's a specific proposal of what to do with the property, which would be actionable in contract, that you would be able to write a contract on. Technically under law, as with the zoning ordinance update, you don't have to have a price in an RFP. But you do have to have an exact proposal, and then you can go back to the qualified bidders and ask for a price after that. In this particular case, because of the technical specifications, the county engineer is sitting right here. It's kind of silly of me to say this, but we've worked on a lot of projects with respect to the engineering that has to be looked at, with respect to the uses of the property, what can be done, with respect to zoning and subdivision, with respect to the environmental, the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental, with respect to how much property. I believe there's currently 10 or 11 acres included with what you had done in the past. There's more acreage on the property though. It would be just my advice, certainly not, an RFQ is out. An RFI isn't going to get you there. And an RFP would be the technical proposal that would be necessary with a price in order to move forward on a property of this complexity and this age.
Thank you, Mr. Britton, for clarifying that. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if we did move forward with that, will we need a statement of work to kind of list out what all encompassing we're looking at? Because I remember the previous proposal that we had to Ralph Bunche Arts and Humanities Center that fell through, there was discussions, and I believe engineering was done at that time. There was an issue with the well for that property. So there's going to be some type of work that has to go in there that's going to be an additional cost on top of anything associated with the physical building itself. There's going to be infrastructure cost on top of that. And as I recall, it was quite significant, those costs, and that's why the initial investor left.
Right, and Travis could address that more in terms of ingress, egress, site distances, and traffic, and that would be the advantage of going with an RFI. So if you went out with an RFI, you would essentially have, like, as a very simplified analogy, a poster contest, right? And a bunch of people submit their drawings, and then you go back and you say, this is the winning drawing. Now we want either an RFQ or an RFP respecting this is the drawing. How much is it going to cost us? How many are we going to produce, and what have you? But so if you had the RFI and you chose the winning idea, then you could go out and ask for an RFP specifically on that. I don't think that it'll be down to the nails exactly as you said in terms of that you'll have to pay for this, and this, because it will say infrastructure, phase one environmental, necessary environmentals, mitigation of environmental issues, things like that. And obviously there has to be some flexibility in there. But again, the going through the two-step process, because you know what you want it to be, as I understand it from looking at the previous RFP and the LOI that was drafted, that it is supposed to preserve the culture and heritage of the building itself. So it can have ancillary uses, such as a community center or a commercial center in the front, or I have no idea what it could be. I know that there was a proposal for part of it to be even apartments or a hotel in the front or something like that, but whatever that is. But I think that you can put out an RFP because, as I understand it, the board's will has always been to preserve its cultural heritage in King George County, and including a museum. And you drill down on those things, and if you do an RFI and none of that's in any of the RFIs, then you're back to an RFP. And in an RFP, you can put some of the things that we were outlining when we were negotiating the option agreement were the hours that it was open, that it would be free to the public or at maximum of this amount of cost, that it would contain a certain amount of square footage, that it would be manned by manned by a certain amount of workers from a certain periods of time, and what have you. And all of that could be in an RFP where it couldn't be in an RFI.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. So it sounds to me like the direction you're suggesting is an RFP would be more robust and would collect all the information that we would need to actually then possibly award a contract. And to me, there doesn't seem to be a lot of sense to do an RFI if that's not going to get us across the finish line. An RFP is what was done 3 years ago. A lot of that body of work is still there and can just be updated based on the current condition of the building. And I'm sure the county engineer will be happy to review that. It's not like we're asking this to go out tomorrow. So, I mean, is everyone all right with an RFP?
Yep.
Yes? All right, so we have unanimous consensus from the board. Direction to Mr. Kusenberry is to issue an RFP, please.
For the repurposing of Ralph Bunche.
The repurposing of Ralph Bunche High School.
Will do.
Thank you.
Typically, the proposals are advertised for 30 days. Now, something this complex, we can do 45 days or 60 days.
Any preference from the board regarding duration?
I would like a little longer to make sure we have.
45 days? I'm okay with 60.
I was going to go for 60.
Too. I mean, we've been here before. Let's give as much time as we can to get thoroughness.
60, I like.
60 days? Right. Yes? Yes, 60 days.
We will proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else for your report, sir? Okay. I believe we are looking for a motion.
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting pursuant to VA Code Section 2.23711A1 for discussion and consideration of prospective candidates for employment for the position of County Administrator and for discussion and considerations of the performance compensation of the County Attorney, Assistant County Attorney, and Paralegal positions. And pursuant to VA Code Section 2.23711A8 for consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, namely the applications of the board's bylaws and rules of procedures. I invite the county administrator and the county attorney, because they are deemed necessary and or their presence will reasonably aid the board in its consideration of the topics to be discussed pursuant to VA Code Section 2.23712F.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. We are in closed session. Do we have a motion?
I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors return to public meeting and certified by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
Each member, please certify.
So certify.
Certify.
So certify.
Certify.
So certified, we are in open session. I wish to read a statement on behalf of the Board of Supervisors as a result of closed session. Mr. Britton has advised the Board of Supervisors of his intent to retire at the end of the calendar year. Is there a motion?
I move to authorize the county administrator to take steps necessary to advertise and take other steps necessary to fill the position of county attorney.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn until July 13th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. We are adjourned.